So firstly, to all of my Dharma friends, Tashi Dele or greetings. I hope that you are well and I hope that you are happy. Today we will be going through the brief increments of the Lamrim, or the stages of the path, from the perspective of meditation. And so within this Lamrim you have the three scopes, and specifically our topic today is part of the middle scope, or the stages of the path common to beings of a middling capacity. And so connected with this middle scope, then, if we speak about its object of abandonment and its object of attainment, its object of abandonment is samsara. We want to get rid of samsara, or cyclic existence. When we speak of circling through samsara, we are talking about circling through that cyclic existence. In terms of the object of attainment, it is liberation from that. And so then, in terms of the state of samsara, if we explain this from the point of view of cause and effect, the effect comes first, suffering, and that comes from the cause of true origins. And Geshe spoke about that in a previous session. And so we said that we want to achieve that state of liberation, and we could say that, like, one of the best kinds, one of the very best types of liberation is this achievement of true cessations. So it is not the very best object of attainment, which we would posit as the achievement of complete enlightenment or full Buddhahood for the sake of beings, but nevertheless it is this liberation that happens when we achieve true cessation of suffering, which is in itself a high state. So when we achieve liberation, then we have the opportunity to achieve a happiness that is completely beyond suffering, or a happiness that is untouched by suffering. So it is not easy to achieve that state of true cessations. We need to study, we need to practice many different things and methods, and that is why we come to the truth of true paths, the paths we need to practice. And where we're trying to get on this path, this is important to understand. We are trying to reach the destination of freedom from karma and affliction. So Geshe will, as much as possible, as much as he is able, he will explain this point about the true paths from the perspective of meditation. So just make the determination that I'm going to put my body and my mind in a relaxed state. Whatever sort of distracting or meaningless thoughts arise, I will simply set these aside. And then just think, right now, I have this human rebirth in the palm of my hand, and I have that together with this uniquely powerful human mind. This means that at this very moment, I have an amazing opportunity.
koinyatsikawa tawainayo kadinayo kwalndri chinokorajane dedevayina zuetene mandiwas.
So if we think about samsara in terms of the outer circling, if we think about the inner samsara and that circling, we will see that as long as we continue to circle within samsara, there will be no lasting respite, no true happiness.
타마타마 강에 로지지 마도 코이 로지 코로 강에 로지지 자 타마타마 강에 로지지 코라 자네 가디나 데데.
We understand that in terms of the nature of samsara or cyclic existence, it is problems. So even if at first there are pleasant experiences, we understand that as we continue to circle, we will eventually meet with more problems. This is inevitable.
코이 대화 사티 뉴아 이나요. 네 가제 뉴아 이나요. 단지소 상황 뭐가 되는 만디스.
We understand that when we speak of these samsaric happinesses, if we take those samsaric happinesses as an example, no matter how much samsaric happiness we experience, we never have the feeling of being satisfied, of being satiated. So that means that there's no real peace or happiness to be found, right? We are constantly experiencing difficulties.
And
if we check carefully our experience, we can relatively easily bring forth a coarse understanding of that. We see, therefore, that samsara is meaningless, that there is no end to it. Therefore, if liberation from samsara, if liberation from this circling is possible, then that is something that we absolutely must achieve. If we want to achieve that bliss of liberation, if we want to achieve that real happiness of liberation, the method that we need to cultivate to achieve that is what is known here as true paths. If we are able to actualize these true paths, then that we call the self, or that we call the I, it will begin to experience that real and meaningful happiness. So if we haven't yet achieved those true paths yet, if we don't yet possess the actualization of those true paths, but we want to be able to achieve that liberation, how do we go forth in study and practice? We can start with something that we can know. We can start with something that we can definitely apply. And that is the practices known as the 3 higher trainings. If we think of the first of these, it is higher training in ethics. And what everyone needs to know and what everyone can apply is the practice of ethics known as the avoidance or the abandonment of the 10 non-virtuous If I practice abandoning the 10 non-virtues, what are the benefits?
먼저 마지라요 세 기부때 보면 봐. 저와라 뭐라 지도. 노동자 뭐라 지도. 무슨 또 돼?
In terms of what we experience, even in one day, that lack of happiness, those unpleasant feelings and emotions that continue to arise.
링어 있어. 아니 뭐게샤 뭐 지라테네테네. 니마지라요 내가 템보지. 라고만 되었어.
So these arise from what are known as the non-virtuous or the unwholesome activities of the body, speech, and mind.
어쩌저글라바 세아디 세시로드 촌에는 노동자 뭐라 소한다 뭐라 소방가만다 뭐라 용대야 듣고 아니라 셀레레 지닐리도 셀레레 지내대야 끝까지 되어야 해.
Through the practice of ethics, by guarding our ethics, higher training in ethics, instead of our mind going towards these feelings and distractions and being compelled into what is unwholesome, we will be able to restrain from that. And then, as a result, our mind will be more peaceful.
소소소미네 자치 뭐지나 가제 저 레마 예사트 게샤wan 걸 도토바이나 임만에냐 다와네 다와 기본 것을 더 바지레.
If you really see yourself as important, if you really cherish yourself, then the wise thing to do is to put your activities of body, speech, and mind into the direction of what is wholesome, into the direction of what is virtuous as much as possible, and then from day to day, month to month, year to year, happiness will increase.
다오나 대용 셀레레 템바 템보 알레바야 보 템보 지고요나스.
And then, if we want the mind to be even more relaxed, then we need a mind that is stable, that is even.
네바시키 니모 사티 대초 kontrol가 잘라 수바. 알레 자원이 돌로서 가도 말했더니 슈트하고 연저와데 이니메지가 그거 왔어.
And so, in terms of the afflictions of attachment, ignorance, pride, and so forth, we won't be able to clear them away completely from the beginning, but we must diminish them as much as possible.
오다네스 드니지 이자 대용하셔봐라 띵엔저가 라바 니바데.
And in order to be able to do that successfully, we need to develop our powers of concentration. So this is the second of the 3 higher trainings, higher training in concentration.
내 자원이 뭐 가르래. 컨트롤이 뭐 가르래. 마리비니 뭐 가르래. 가제 더더 세텔. 템보 가제 더 바이나. 아니 띵엔저가 라바. 요래야 보도요. 알았어.
If we think about the antidote, what is the antidote to anger? What is the antidote to attachment? What is the antidote to ignorance? If we are able to rest on the antidote to those unwholesome minds in a stable way, we can definitely diminish them. This is the practice of higher concentration.
다니모 사데 년저와 가제트도 과터소나 아니 링아이스 무게샤왈 인주야 슈토본 유야드 가요.
If we are able as much as possible to address what is known as the enemy, these enemies of the afflictions, at least these manifest or prominent afflictions, then naturally we will be less compelled to engage in unwholesomeness of body, speech, and mind.
셀레레 잡아띵보 기보 전에 대서야데. 다 유아르 때때르도네라더니 기본기는 것도 보지 못했어.
Then the mind will become more stable. We will have a greater capacity in our power of mindfulness. And as the mind becomes more and more stable, it becomes increasingly peaceful, increasingly happy.
오늘 라바 대니 기본요를 시네. 안에 니가 마세치리 이나래 가제 달레레 차거리테 대지복은 누구르베.
So the question might come, well, from practicing just these two, the higher trainings in ethics and concentration, the life becomes happier, it improves, but is that enough?
변화가로서 롱가시 기보질에 사야 기보질은 거요나 롱갈 안에 가디나 까데기가 내가시야 되게抓보지 가디나 강에 되게요나스.
So imagine that there is a path that you need to travel along in order to be able to proceed happily. You want to enjoy this journey, eat, drink, and so forth. But there is a poisonous tree that is obstructing this road or this path.
저쪽을 라바티가 로마라서 봐도 아니 야라 가시 밤에 와서 도서왔어.
Through the practice of ethics, we may have been able to get rid of some of the leaves of this poisonous tree that's blocking our way, or even maybe some of the branches or twigs.
디면적을 라바티가 셰가제스 밤에 와서 더 시도돼. 되게 심해 와서 더 근데 왔어.
And if we bring forth concentration, we may be able to cut down even further so that perhaps half of the tree is gone.
다와나 디지만이 사자기 못하는 거야. 시도 디가 내가 마시야 터치 바르베스.
But does that mean that that tree can never arise again? It can never grow thicker so that it will block our path to that destination of happiness again?
터치 문제 왔어. 가르레스나 싱크자와 고르바게 단달라디 알았어.
We can't say that with any certainty. Why? Because the root of that poisonous tree, that obstructing tree, is still there in the soil.
다 로라 바체 사자기 원도야 될 바체 땡데메 바체 셰발라 이니 민지 되게 시트 자와니 메바 마시나 윤주 키네 바시 그러스.
In terms of that obstacle blocking our road to happiness, if we aren't able to get rid of its very root, there is always the danger of that tree arising again and again and obstructing us.
알았어요. 나사 자치 못서 돼야 기본 이내질은 거요나. 니가 기본 바지 매바서 이러면 되었어. 니모사 자원이 매바셔야지.
If with that we call the self, or that we call the I, if we see it as important and we want it to achieve real lasting happiness, temporary happiness is not enough. We want to be able to achieve lasting happiness, and for that we need to get rid of the afflictions from their very root.
드리지 와시발라 시라 라마 이니 메지 그 뒤노네 주도니도 비시라 세야 이니 메지 맨 타메 바지레 디와스.
In order to do that, what we must do is bring forth the third of these trainings, higher training in wisdom. And specifically, we must bring forth the wisdom realizing emptiness. There is no other way to get rid of the root.
또 많이 근데서 가시지 로얄 깔레가 버렸대 가시지 라바이나 아니 근데 저 콘도 맞아 저도라서 그래서 손스 강가 대만 매봐 저하고 또 kumban 노지 지간서 통통해요 내서 지와레스.
Although emptiness is very difficult to achieve, to realize, if as much as possible we strive for it, if we finally get it, if we understand that emptiness, then we will see that these underlying perceptions that lead to attachment, anger, and ignorance are completely untrue, not based in reality. They are just like a house made of ice.
그냥 저기들 kumban이 지워서 다니 지워 간디 지워봐 이나요. 그때 뭐면 봐 거서 이제 할레베트니 될 쳐봐줘보 드리시네라 영무슈치와 싫어인 거 말아왔어.
So, for example, even if there is a very beautifully constructed and elaborate ice house, we understand that its nature is temporary, it's not lasting. And because of that, there won't be attachment arising to it. At least there won't be strong afflictions arising in relation to that.
배때는 오지 또 많이 세야 돼. 니에네서 지수가 이나? 아니 너무 강가 알로로 땡보면 정말 바치 통하고 거까지 라고 말했어.
Like that, if we are able to bring forth a feeling of emptiness, we will see that all of the afflictions are something ephemeral and unstable, and accordingly, we will be able to reduce all of the afflicted minds.
어떻든지 지는지 제일 손으로 와이는 달아봤어도 이제 민지 롱질 땡보요 그 매는 다음에 만나고 세워지는 거스.
So understanding this, then as much as possible, bring forth this wish to cultivate these three trainings, understanding that in terms of what we want to achieve, there is no other method by which we can do that. You need this thought that we are going to engage in the practice of these three higher trainings joyfully and happily. Thanks. We'll pause there.
예송아 어다 라바스 못했더니 저쪽에 라바티 메이 리데도 나와 인간적인 라바테 근데 라바테 못해도 나와 시라가 라바테 시 뒤에 심해봐서야 근데 따라야 되도 나와 어떤 지나서 또 야레스.
So Geshe is just tying it again to the example of this poisonous tree. He says ethics is like the strong body of the person who is going to cut it down. Concentration will be like the arm or the hand that wields the axe, and the axe itself that is able to completely get rid of the tree is like this wisdom.
어다 셀 대서 지인 좀 봐이나 타네 강에 간데 지나요 타네 쳔이 예시노 던지노 그거면 강감에 와서 도근디스.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And so Geshe said, a mind that possesses this three, then whatever affliction arises, we don't need to fear it, right? It cannot cause us too many problems. So thank you very much. Please study and practice this well.